What if the greatest truth about your life is something you've known all along, but forgotten? Imagine standing at the edge of life, ready to step beyond, and realizing that every moment, every triumph, every failure was nothing more than the reflection of what you dared or refused to imagine. Tonight, I invite you to listen as if it were the very last message left behind, a message that has the power to change everything. We spend our days believing that the outer world controls us, our jobs, our circumstances, the opinions of others. Yet the final truth is this: the world outside is only a shadow, and the real power lies within. Your imagination is not a fantasy. It is not idle daydreaming. It is the creative force of life itself. Whatever you assume as true within, whatever you persist in believing, will carve itself into form without. If you dare to live as though your desire were already yours, life cannot help but rearrange itself to match that inner state. Do not wait for evidence. Do not beg circumstances to change. Begin within, feel it real, and walk in that conviction. And when you are tempted to doubt, remember that delay is not denial. The outer world may be slow, but it is only catching up to what you have already accepted as true. Every person you encounter, every reaction you face, is nothing more than yourself reflected back. To change them, change within. To free yourself, assume the freedom now. And when the time comes to leave this physical frame, know this: there is no end. Consciousness cannot die. You will step into yet another scene, another state, another world, and continue the eternal journey of imagination. Imagination is not a fleeting daydream or a whimsical escape from reality. It is the very foundation upon which reality rests. Everything that exists around you, every building, invention, system, and even the smallest detail of human life, was first conceived in the imagination before it became tangible. The phone in your hand, the chair you sit on, the clothes you wear, all of these were once intangible thoughts in the mind of someone who dared to imagine them as real. This truth reveals something profound. The outer world is not the source of your life, but the reflection of your inner convictions. What you vividly and persistently imagine with belief, you bring into existence. To understand this, you must recognize the dynamic nature of imagination. It is not a passive tool, but a creative force. When you imagine with conviction, you are not merely entertaining fantasy. You are planting seeds into the soil of consciousness. Just as a gardener trusts that the seed hidden in the ground will one day break through as a visible plant, so too must you trust that your imagined reality, when nurtured with belief, will eventually emerge in the outer world. Without imagination, life would remain static, predictable, and mechanical. But with imagination, life becomes fluid, ever-changing, and capable of manifesting the extraordinary. Consider how often people use imagination in reverse. Instead of imagining success, love, or abundance, they dwell on fear, worry, and failure. They replay arguments in their minds, anticipate rejection, or picture scenarios of loss. In doing so, they unconsciously use the same creative power, but direct it toward building realities they do not desire. Imagination does not discriminate. It brings forth whatever is vividly and consistently impressed upon it. If you allow negative images to dominate, your external world begins to mirror them. This is why discipline of the mind is essential, because the images you permit yourself to entertain shape the quality of your life. When you imagine with conviction, something remarkable happens within you. The body and mind cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced. A person who imagines standing on a beach, feeling the warm sand beneath their feet, and hearing the ocean waves crash, can experience real physiological responses. The heartbeat may slow, muscles may relax, and a sense of peace may wash over them, as if they were truly there. This demonstrates that imagination already contains the power to alter your present state of being. And if it can alter your inner state, it inevitably influences your outer world, because the world outside is only a delayed reflection of the state within. To live deliberately, you must cultivate the practice of assuming the reality you desire in imagination. This is not simply about visualizing an image in your mind. It is about entering into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. If you desire success, do not merely see yourself succeeding, but feel the satisfaction, confidence, and joy as though it were already accomplished. If you desire love, do not merely imagine another person loving you, but feel yourself as the embodiment of love, worthy and cherished. The conviction behind the imagination is what breathes life into it. A passing thought may vanish, but a thought charged with emotion and belief sets in motion unseen currents that shape the future. Imagination is also the silent architect of identity. Who you believe yourself to be determines the limits or expansiveness of your life. If you imagine yourself as powerless, unlucky, or undeserving, you unconsciously script your life to match those assumptions. If instead you dare to imagine yourself as capable, worthy, and destined for greatness, your actions, perceptions, and experiences begin to conform to that image. The world does not shape who you are. Who you imagine yourself to be shapes how the world appears to you. Change the image within, and the reflection without must change accordingly. The greatest obstacle people face in harnessing imagination is doubt. They look to the outer world for evidence before allowing themselves to believe. But imagination demands the opposite. You must believe first, regardless of evidence, and persist until the evidence appears. This persistence requires courage, for the outer world may temporarily contradict the inner vision. Yet if you hold fast, refusing to surrender your imagined reality to appearances, life has no choice but to align with the conviction you carry. Reality bends to the strength of imagination, never the other way around. It is important to understand that imagination is not limited to grand dreams or distant futures. It operates in every moment of life. Every time you interpret a situation, you are imagining. Every time you decide how someone feels about you, you are imagining. Every time you anticipate what tomorrow will bring, you are imagining. Most people do this unconsciously, assuming negative outcomes or repeating past disappointments. But when you awaken to the truth that imagination is the true reality, you begin to direct it consciously, shaping each moment and expectation toward the life you wish to live. Think of imagination as the invisible blueprint of existence. Just as a building cannot be constructed without a detailed plan, life cannot unfold without a pattern set within consciousness. That pattern is your imagination. If you hold an image with clarity and conviction, it becomes the unseen design from which reality is built. This is why imagination is more real than what you see with your physical eyes. Because what you see is only the product of past imaginings, while what you imagine now is the seed of future experiences. The outer world lags behind, but imagination is always immediate, always present, always real. To live in the end is to enter into the psychological state of already being, already having, and already experiencing the reality you desire without waiting for the physical world to first confirm it. This principle requires that you assume the state of the wish fulfilled. Not tomorrow, not later, but here and now, and that you persist in this inner knowing until the invisible becomes visible, until the intangible crystallizes into fact. Most people live as victims of circumstance, reacting to what the world shows them, but to live in the end is to reverse this order. It is to impress upon yourself the conviction that what you seek is already accomplished, and then to move through life as though nothing could contradict that inner truth. This does not mean you are pretending, forcing, or lying to yourself. It means you are recognizing that the outer world is a mirror, and a mirror can only reflect the image you hold within. If you stand in front of a mirror and frown, you cannot expect to see a smile in return. Likewise, if you live inwardly and lack fear or longing, the mirror of life reflects more of the same. Living in the end bypasses this endless cycle by anchoring you in the conviction that the result already exists, and therefore, what shows up outwardly is only a matter of time. You begin to move, think, and feel from the position of already having what you desire, and this shift in consciousness becomes the magnet that pulls circumstances, people, and opportunities into alignment with your assumption. The essence of living in the end is found in the inner feeling. You do not simply visualize the result as though watching a movie. You step into it, inhabit it, and feel the reality of it in your body and mind. If you desire wealth, you do not merely imagine stacks of money, you feel the freedom, security, and confidence of already being wealthy. If you desire love, you do not merely picture a partner, you embody the state of being loved, cherished, and secure in a relationship. The end result must become your dwelling place, your inner home, so that regardless of outer appearances, you return again and again to the state where your desire is already complete. Persistence is the secret ingredient that transforms imagination into fact. Living in the end is not a one-time exercise, but a continual returning to the inner state, especially when the external world shows you the opposite. There will always be moments when appearances seem to mock your inner conviction. Perhaps the job you desire has not yet appeared. The relationship you dream of has not yet formed, or the financial freedom you imagine still seems far away. In those moments, the temptation is to abandon the inner vision and accept the outer as final. But persistence demands that you hold fast, that you remain in the end as if it were already done, because the outer is always playing catch up to the inner. This is why patience becomes effortless when you live in the end. You no longer measure progress by what the eyes can see. You measure it by the certainty you feel within. Just as a seed once planted cannot instantly become a tree, The imagination once assumed requires time to manifest in form. Yet the tree is already contained within the seed, and the fulfillment of your desire is already contained within your assumption. The task is not to force the seed to grow, but to trust the process and remain faithful to the unseen reality until it emerges into the visible. Living in the end also transforms the way you interact with the world around you. Instead of approaching life from the perspective of lack, hoping, wishing, or begging, you approach it from fulfillment. You speak differently, carry yourself differently, and interpret events differently because you are no longer seeking evidence, you are affirming what is already true in your inner world. Someone who lives in the end of being healthy does not constantly check for symptoms or signs of illness. They walk, eat, and think as though health were their natural state. Someone who lives in the end of abundance does not fixate on every bill or shortage. They carry the calm assurance that provision is inevitable. The outer details may still shift and rearrange, but the inner conviction remains stable. It is also important to realize that living in the end is not about controlling how or when your desire will manifest. The means are never your concern. Your only responsibility is to inhabit the end result fully, leaving the unfolding to the unseen intelligence that governs creation. If you try to dictate the steps, you risk slipping back into the state of lack, because control implies uncertainty. Living in the end is an act of surrender, a release of doubt, and a declaration that the result is already yours regardless of how it arrives. When you live in the end long enough, something profound happens. You begin to notice subtle shifts in yourself and in the world around you. You may find unexpected opportunities presenting themselves, people responding to you differently, or circumstances aligning in ways you could not have predicted. These shifts are not coincidences, they are reflections of the inner state you have assumed. By persisting in that state, you invite life to reorganize itself in accordance with your conviction. This is why those who master living in the end often seem to manifest effortlessly, while others struggle endlessly against circumstances. They understand that outer struggle is unnecessary when inner victory is already secured. In the final analysis, to live in the end is to trust the unseen more than the seen, to honor the imagination more than appearances, and to persist in the conviction that what you desire is already accomplished. It is a radical reversal of the ordinary way of living, where most wait for proof before believing. Here you believe first, inhabit the end first, and allow the proof to follow in its appointed season. Feeling is the secret, because it is the missing link between thought and manifestation, the invisible bridge that carries your imagined reality into the realm of fact. You can think endlessly about what you want, you can visualize in great detail, but without the emotional charge that comes from feeling it real, your imagination remains a shadow with no substance. Feeling is what breathes life into the images of the mind. It is not enough to casually imagine yourself wealthy, loved, or successful. You must feel the weight of the money in your hands, the warmth of love in your heart, the thrill of accomplishment in your body. Feeling transforms an abstract idea into a living reality within consciousness, and that inner reality eventually must express itself outwardly. The reason feeling holds such power is that the subconscious mind does not respond to empty words or fleeting images. It responds to the emotional intensity behind them. You can affirm, "I am successful," 1,000 times a day, but if deep down you feel unworthy or doubtful, the subconscious will reflect the feeling, not the words. On the other hand, a single assumption that is vividly felt as true impresses the subconscious far more deeply than endless repetition without conviction. This is why people often fail when they try to force affirmations with no emotional alignment. They are speaking one reality but feeling another, and it is the feeling that creates. When you deliberately generate the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you are training your inner world to accept it as already accomplished. For example, if you desire freedom from financial struggle, you might imagine checking your bank account and seeing a balance that brings peace and joy. But the key is not the number on the screen. The key is the feeling of relief, gratitude, and freedom that arises as you imagine it. If you can sustain that emotional state, you align yourself with the reality of abundance, and life reorganizes itself to match that inner vibration. The feeling of wealth precedes the evidence of wealth, just as the feeling of love precedes the arrival of the relationship. This principle can be seen in the way the body reacts to imagination infused with feeling. If you vividly imagine standing on a stage in front of a cheering audience, your heart may race, your palms may sweat, and adrenaline may surge through your body. Physically, your body cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined event and a real one. This is the clearest demonstration of how feeling makes imagination real. It convinces the subconscious that what is felt is already true. Once impressed upon the subconscious, the external world eventually mirrors the conviction through circumstances, events, and encounters. Feeling is also the secret because it determines the quality of the states you dwell in. Two people can imagine the same desire, but experience different outcomes depending on the emotional state they embody. One may imagine from a place of desperation, feeling lack and emptiness, while another imagines from a place of certainty, feeling joy and fulfillment. Though both picture the same scene, the subconscious responds to the emotional charge, not the surface image. The one who feels the desire is already realized is living in the end, while the one who feels longing is perpetuating the state of not having. Thus, it is not the image alone but the feeling you attach to it that determines whether your desire manifests. It is often said that life reflects not what you want, but what you are. To be something is to feel it as your natural state. If you feel yourself unloved, the world reflects that condition back to you through rejection or indifference. If you feel yourself loved, secure, and valued, the world cannot help but mirror that state through experiences and relationships. Feeling is the substance of identity. Who you believe yourself to be emotionally becomes the script from which your life plays out. Change the feeling of self, and the entire world must rearrange accordingly. Practicing the art of feeling it real requires conscious discipline. The mind is prone to wander, to dwell on fears, doubts, and appearances that contradict your desire. But every time you return to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are reinforcing the inner reality that will one day harden into fact. This persistence is not about straining or forcing. It is about gently but firmly returning to the emotional atmosphere of already being the person you wish to be. Over time, this state becomes natural, effortless, and self-sustaining until the external world is compelled to reflect it. Another aspect of feeling as the secret is its ability to bypass logic. Often, reason argues against your desire. If you are broke, logic insists that wealth is impossible. If you are alone, logic whispers that love is out of reach. But feeling transcends logic because when you feel something as real, it bypasses the conscious mind's objections and impresses itself directly on the subconscious. You do not need to know how your desire will manifest. You only need to feel it as though it already has. Now, is handled by forces beyond your conscious control. But the what is sealed through the intensity of feeling. Feeling is also the essence of faith. True faith is not blind belief, but the inner conviction that something unseen is already true. When you feel your desire is accomplished, you are exercising faith, even if the outer world shows no evidence. This faith is not passive, it is a creative act that calls unseen realities into being. The unseen responds not to idle wishing, but to the vibrancy of felt conviction. In this way, feeling is not merely an emotional experience, it is the engine of creation itself. To master feeling is to master life, for once you can summon at will the emotional state of your fulfilled desire, you are no longer a prisoner of appearances. You live from the inside out, shaping the external world through the inner conviction of already being what you wish to be. This is the true power of imagination. Charged by feeling, it becomes a living reality within, and what is alive within must eventually take form without persistence over circumstance, is the hidden law that separates those who merely wish from those who truly create. The outer world is slow, often resistant, and frequently deceptive. It presents evidence that contradicts your inner desire. It tempts you to surrender to appearances, and it whispers doubt when nothing seems to change. Yet, the one who persists in their inner vision despite the outer delay is the one who discovers that reality eventually bends to the conviction held within. Circumstances are not final, they are only reflections of past assumptions, and persistence is the force that reshapes them into new forms. When you set an intention or imagine the fulfillment of a desire, you plant a seed in consciousness. Just as a gardener does not dig up the seed each day to check if it is growing, so too must you resist the urge to constantly measure or doubt your progress. The seed grows invisibly before it breaks through the soil, and so it is with desire. The invisible processes of life are always at work, even when no outer evidence is visible. This is why persistence is vital. You must hold to the inner knowing long enough for the unseen to complete its work and reveal itself as form. Most people fail because they abandon their vision too soon. They look at the outer world, see no change, and conclude that imagination has no power. In truth, it is not imagination that fails, but their lack of persistence that causes them to return to old assumptions. Every time you drop the inner vision and accept the outer as final, you uproot the seed you planted. Persistence means refusing to give in to appearances, holding steady to the conviction that your desire is already accomplished. and returning again and again to that inner state until it becomes the only reality you acknowledge. The outer world is always a lagging indicator. It shows you the results of what you previously believed and felt, not what you are believing and feeling now. If you forget this, you will be tempted to judge your future by your present conditions. But the wise creator understands that present conditions are temporary echoes of the past, and they persist in their new vision regardless of what is currently seen. To persist over circumstances, to live by the inner truth rather than the outer evidence, to anchor yourself in imagination rather than appearances. Persistence is not about straining, forcing, or anxiously repeating affirmations. It is a calm, steady, unwavering conviction that your inner reality is more real than anything the senses can report. It is the refusal to be swayed by delay, rejection, or contradiction. When circumstances scream that you are failing, persistence whispers that success is already secured. When appearances insist that nothing is changing, persistence affirms that everything is unfolding perfectly behind the scenes. This steady inner posture eventually wears down resistance in the outer world and compels it to yield. Great inventors, artists, and visionaries throughout history embody this principle. They faced setbacks, ridicule, and endless delays, yet they persisted in their vision. They held fast to the inner picture of what they desired, often long before anyone else could see it. Their persistence became the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the dream and the achievement. In your own life, the same law applies. Whether your desire is love, health, success, or freedom, it will not appear instantly in all cases. But persistence ensures that, in time, it must appear, because reality cannot resist the pressure of sustained inner conviction. There is also a deep psychological transformation that occurs when you persist. Each time you return to your inner vision in the face of contradiction, you strengthen your faith, you train your mind to prioritize the unseen over the seen, and you develop a resilience that makes you unshakable. You no longer collapse under disappointment or rejection, because you know these are temporary illusions. You learn to walk by faith, not by sight, and in doing so, you gain mastery over your inner world. This mastery is what eventually reshapes the outer. It is natural to feel impatience, frustration, or doubt at times. Persistence does not mean you never waver. It means that no matter how many times you waver, you return. You bring yourself back again and again to the inner state of fulfillment until it becomes second nature. Over time, the persistence rewires your subconscious, and once the subconscious is convinced, the outer world has no choice but to reflect it. This is why persistence is not wasted effort, but the most powerful act of creation. Even obstacles, delays, and seeming failures can serve as stepping stones when met with persistence. They test the strength of your conviction. And if you respond by deepening your inner faith instead of abandoning it, you accelerate the process. Circumstances are like clay. They can be molded and reshaped by the pressure of persistent imagination. Without persistence, the clay hardens into its old form. With persistence, it yields and becomes something new. This is why those who persist eventually seem lucky or blessed, while those who quit believe life is unfair. Life is always fair to the persistent because persistence bends life into alignment. To persist over circumstance is to declare that imagination is sovereign and that appearances are temporary. It is to treat delays as illusions, rejections as stepping stones, and contradictions as proof that transformation is underway. It is to live with the certainty that what you hold within must, sooner or later, appear without. Persistence is the quiet force that transforms desire into destiny, that turns the invisible vision into undeniable fact, that proves again and again that the outer world is never final, but always subject to the power of unwavering inner faith. Everyone is you pushed out means that the people, circumstances, and events you encounter in life are not independent forces acting upon you, but mirrors of your own assumptions, beliefs, and self-concept. This principle turns the ordinary understanding of relationships upside down. Instead of seeing others as separate entities with power over your destiny, you come to realize that they reflect what you assume to be true of yourself and of them. The outer world is not an accident or coincidence. It is a projection of your inner world, and every encounter gives you a chance to see your own beliefs in action. When you hold certain assumptions about yourself, those assumptions inevitably color how others treat you. If you see yourself as unworthy, unnoticed, or unimportant, people will unconsciously mirror that belief back to you through indifference, rejection, or neglect. If you believe yourself to be valuable, loved, and respected, others will respond accordingly, often without understanding why. They are simply reflecting the state you carry within. The truth is not that others decide who you are, but that your inner conviction silently instructs them on how to respond. Everyone becomes an actor in the play you have scripted in consciousness. This principle can be unsettling because it removes the comfort of blaming others. If everyone is you pushed out, then the criticism of a boss, the coldness of a partner, or the betrayal of a friend cannot be explained as random misfortune. Instead, these events reveal assumptions you may not even be aware you are holding. This is not about assigning guilt or self-condemnation, but about recognizing that you are the true source of your experiences. If something in your outer world is undesirable, the solution is not to fight against people or circumstances, but to revise the assumptions that created them. Consider relationships as a clear example. Many people struggle with feeling unloved or unwanted, and they believe the solution is to find the right partner. But if the inner state of being unwanted persists, even the right partner will eventually behave in ways that echo that state. Conversely, when a person revises their self-concept to feel loved and valued, their relationships shift, sometimes through the transformation of an existing partner, other times through the appearance of new people who naturally treat them according to the new assumption. The outer world must conform to the image you hold of yourself, and those around you cannot help but play their part in reflecting it. The same principle applies to success, opportunity, and abundance. If you assume the world is hostile, competitive, and scarce, you will meet people who block you, cheat you, or deny you opportunities. If you assume life is supportive, generous, and abundant, you will encounter helpers, mentors, and open doors. Others may seem to change, but in truth, it is your inner state that has shifted, and the world, being a mirror, reflects the change. Everyone is you pushed out means that no interaction is neutral. Every interaction is a reflection of an inner assumption. This principle also reveals why repeated patterns appear in life. Some people notice they always attract the same type of partner, face the same conflicts at work, or encounter the same disappointments in different forms. These repetitions are not coincidences, but the result of holding the same assumptions over time. The outer world keeps replaying the same script until the assumption is revised. By identifying and changing the inner belief, the pattern breaks and new experiences emerge. Life does not recycle events to punish you, but to reveal what is being projected so that you can consciously choose differently. It is important to understand that everyone being you pushed out does not mean you are consciously dictating every action of others. It means that the assumptions you hold about yourself and others form the framework within which people respond. You may not consciously think, this person will reject me. But if you hold a deep belief of being unworthy, the person unconsciously aligns with that belief. Similarly, if you carry the assumption, people are kind and helpful to me, strangers may go out of their way to assist you, seemingly without reason. The outer play is orchestrated by the inner script. Whether you are aware of writing it or not, this realization grants immense freedom because it reveals that you do not need to manipulate others, argue for their behavior to change, or beg for recognition. All change begins within. If you want someone to see you differently, see yourself differently first. If you want better treatment from others, assume a higher self-concept and live in that state until it reflects outwardly. Even if a specific person does not change, new people will appear to fulfill the new assumption, because the world has no choice but to conform to the image you persist in holding. Persistence plays a key role in applying this principle. The old assumptions may have been reinforced for years, and the outer world will continue to echo them until your new assumption takes root. During this period, you may still encounter reflections of the old belief, but the task is to remain faithful to the new vision. Over time, as the new self-concept becomes dominant, the reflections around you shift, and life begins to show you a different face. Everyone as you pushed out requires patience and consistency, but the transformation is inevitable once the inner change is made. Ultimately, this principle teaches that separation is an illusion. Others are not independent forces acting against you, but mirrors revealing you to yourself. The boss, the friend, the stranger on the street, they all reflect the assumptions you carry about life and about yourself. By revising your self-concept, you revise the script of the play, and everyone, knowingly or unknowingly, acts in harmony with the new story. This is why mastery of self is mastery of life, because when you change within, the world has no choice but to change. Without death is not the end, because what you truly are is not the body that you see in the mirror, nor the personality you project to the world, nor even the collection of memories you hold dear. At the core of your being, you are consciousness itself, and consciousness cannot die. It cannot be destroyed, diminished, or extinguished, because it is the very substance out of which existence is made. Physical death, then, is not an ending but a transition, a doorway into another chapter of the eternal unfolding of life. To believe that death marks the conclusion of your being is to mistake the vehicle for the traveler, the garment for the wearer, the stage for the actor who continues to perform beyond the curtain from the moment you were born. You have witnessed the constant change of your physical body. Cells die and regenerate, your appearance shifts, your thoughts evolve, and yet throughout all of these changes there is a continuous sense of I am. That sense of being, the awareness that you exist, has never changed. It is the one constant behind every experience. If consciousness remained present through all the transformations of life, why would it suddenly vanish at physical death? The body is like a temporary home, a dwelling through which consciousness expresses itself in this realm, and when the body falls away, consciousness simply moves on to another form, another dimension, another way of experiencing itself. The fear of death arises primarily from identification with the body and the ego. When you believe that you are only flesh, bones, and personality, then the loss of these seems to imply the loss of self. But if you recognize that your body is merely an instrument and your ego a mask, then their dissolution no longer terrifies you. Just as you discard old clothes when they no longer serve you, so too does consciousness discard the body when its purpose in this realm is complete. Death becomes not an annihilation but a graduation, a passage into greater life. Consciousness does not end. It expands, continues, and discovers new horizons beyond the limits of physical form. Consider how even in dreams you experience worlds that feel real, relationships that evoke emotion, and events that carry meaning, yet your physical body lies asleep. The dream world is constructed entirely within consciousness, and while you are in it, it is as vivid and convincing as waking life. Death may be compared to this not as oblivion, but as awakening into another dimension of consciousness, where the scenery changes but the experiencer remains the same. The you that says, I am, is indestructible, and death is only the shifting of focus from one plane of experience to another. This understanding changes the way you view both life and death. If you know that consciousness is eternal, you no longer fear the moment when the body fails. Instead, you begin to see life as a journey of states, each one offering growth, learning, and expansion. Death becomes no more tragic than moving from one room of a house to another, or from one scene of a play to the next. You continue to exist, to perceive, to imagine, because those functions belong not to the body, but to the essence of consciousness itself. The body may cease, but the dreamer of the dream never dies. This also transforms the way you experience grief. When a loved one passes, the pain comes from believing they are gone forever. But if death is a doorway, then they are not gone, they are simply unseen by the physical eyes. Their consciousness continues, their journey unfolds, and the bond you share is not severed but altered. Just as someone traveling to another country is still alive though no longer physically present, so too are those who pass on still alive in a realm invisible to the senses. Recognizing this allows grief to transform into reverence, replacing despair with the assurance that life is unbroken and eternal. Furthermore, the continuity of consciousness explains the sense of unfinished dreams, innate talents, and deep affinities that people sometimes carry. These may be remnants of prior experiences, echoes of journeys taken before, carried forward as part of the eternal unfolding. If consciousness persists, then death is but a chapter turn in a story that stretches far beyond one lifetime. Each incarnation is an opportunity for consciousness to explore itself in new ways, and death is merely the punctuation between sentences, never the end of the book. Even in the natural world, death is never an ending but a transformation. The seed dies to become a tree, the caterpillar dies to become a butterfly, the day dies to give birth to night, and the cycle continues endlessly. Nowhere in nature is there true annihilation, only change of form. Energy shifts, matter transforms, but nothing is ever lost. If this is true of plants, animals, and stars, how much more is it true of consciousness, the very foundation of all existence? Death, then, is not the termination of life, but the renewal of it, the shifting of energy from one mode of expression to another. When you embrace this truth, your perspective on life itself changes. Instead of clinging desperately to each moment for fear it will be your last, you begin to live more freely, knowing that existence cannot end. You become less concerned with survival and more concerned with creation, expression, and expansion. Death loses its sting because you see it for what it is: a doorway, a transition, an invitation to greater unfolding. Consciousness is the eternal traveler, and physical life is but one of its many journeys, one stage in an infinite play of becoming. So, what is the final message? It is not hidden in scriptures nor buried in secrets. It is alive in you right now. Dare to imagine. Dare to feel it real. Dare to persist until the unseen becomes seen. For when the curtain falls on this life, the only question will be, did you live as the creator or as the created? And that answer is entirely yours to choose.